Hello and Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo. We're reading the Basics of Buddhism by Pat Allwright, and today's chapter entitled The Eternity of Life. So there's a quote here and it says, "If you wish to free yourself from the suffering of birth and death you have endured throughout eternity and attained supreme enlightenment in this lifetime, you must awaken to the mystic truth which has always been within your life. The truth is nam-myo-ho-renge-kyo." So, the Buddhist view of the entity of life is expressed as follows. If when wide awake, we examine our true nature, we will find no beginning that requires our being born and no end that requires our dying. It is certainly true that if we look back, we cannot remember a beginning to our lives. Our subjective experience of life is that it has always existed and always will exist. Apart from our feelings, of course, there is no proof whatsoever as to what will happen when we die. Belief in the entirety of life lies in the realm of faith. Nevertheless, there are things we observe about the nature of life which lend support to the idea that life continues. For example, the rhythm of nature is cyclic. Although most plants appear lifeless in the winter, they grow again in the spring. In fact, everything we observe in the nature goes through cycles. It is we human beings who have invented the notion of a straight line with a beginning and an end. We also know from science that matter cannot be destroyed but rather changes into another form of energy. When, for example, we burn something, it is not destroyed but changes into gases and residual matter. Both our own experience and the observation of natural cycles make it logical to suppose that life continues in some way, rather than coming to an abrupt stop. In accordance with this, Buddhism explains that continuous cycle of life and death throughout eternity. Myo or Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo means life and death. Moyo is usually translated as mystic law. This law encompasses the two aspects of life and death. It is called mystic because it's difficult to comprehend. Moyo also means seen and unseen, or latent and manifest. We experience these phases of life and death all the time. For example, one minute we are happy and the next angry. Where did the happiness go? We cannot say it does not exist because it will appear again where the circumstances are right. Likewise, we cannot say it exists because it is not here at this moment, yet we know it has not gone forever. This is the nature of everything. It comes and goes, at one moment manifest and the next latent. This state of neither existence nor non-existent is called ku, pronounced, and it's spelled Ku, ku. The rain cycle is a good illustration of the phases of life and death. Rain falls and is absorbed into the earth. It appears in streams and rivers, eventually flowing to the ocean. When the water evaporates, it loses its visible form temporarily until it condenses into clouds and becomes rain again. Even though we cannot see the water vapor, we know it is still there. It is invisible form of H2O. The visible water is like life, and the unseen water vapor like death. The water vapors have the potential, ku, to become rain when the circumstances are right. This continues in a never ending cycle, which is why it makes such a good analogy for the cycle of life and death. The life death cycle is often compared to alternate periods of being awake and asleep. Sleep refreshes us physically and mentally. Likewise, death is necessary to restore our energy in preparation for a new life. How then does Buddhism explain death and rebirth? Our lives have three aspects: body, mind, and entity. At the time of death, all three aspects merge with the universe, passing from a sentient to an insentient state. An individual life becomes indistinguishable from universal life. Nichiren Buddhism explains the Buddha, perfectly enlightened in the three bodies, body, mind, and entity, takes the entire universe as his true body. takes the entire universe as his spiritual nature, takes the entire universe as his physical existence. At the time of death, all three aspects of our lives become one with the eternal flow of the universe. The even individual workings of the physical and mental aspects of life are no longer distinguishable from the whole. This is quite different from the idea of transmigration of the soul, which is found in other religions. Buddhism denies the existence of soul. The individual entity does not go to some particular place like heaven, or does it wander around in an unseen form. It is united with the universe. This can be compared to an iceberg melting into the ocean. While it exists, an iceberg has a massive unseen portion under the surface of the water. Likewise, individuals have huge potential, most of which is not apparent. When we die, all of this, seen and unseen, melts back into the universal life. The entity of an individual life continues in the state of ku, which transcends existence and non existence. When the circumstances are appropriate, the individual manifestation of the entity will be born. This continues in a never ending cycle, just like the rain cycle. Hence the different lifetimes, people. Anyway, how rebirth happens is beyond everyday comprehension. Similarly, we do not know what happens while we are asleep. Where does our conscious mind go? While we are asleep, it seems to vanish, yet when we wake up, it returns. This is explained by the concept of ku. According to Buddhism, this is the state we enter when we die. There are many things about life which are sources of wonder. For instance, a single cell has the inbuilt capacity to produce a full grown and integrated human being. This is also beyond imagination, yet happens as a common everyday occurrence. Miracles. Similarly, life and death defy ordinary description of space and time. Life cannot be consumed by the fire at the end of the kalpa, nor can it be washed away by floods. It can be neither cut by swords nor pierced by arrows. Although it can fit inside a mustard seed, the seed does not expand, nor does life contract. Although it fills the vastness of space, space is not too wide, nor is life too small. This poetic description of the nature of life opens our minds to a concept which is beyond time and space. We tend to think that our lives are confined within our skins, yet when we are at work, our influence is still present at home. We are part of our friends' lives, even if they are thousands of miles away. Our lives are not confined just to the space occupied by our physical body. Furthermore, whether we think about it or not, our lives are integrated with the universe as a whole. We are at the same time individual and universal. Viewed like this, it becomes conceivable that when we are in the phase of death, we are merged with the universe and yet retain the seed of our individuality. An individual life in the state of ku is not necessarily at peace, just as sleep is not always restful. While alive, we have the power to change our life condition from moment to moment in response to external influences. If we feel sad, a friend coming round could cheer us up. However, while in ku, one has no power to change one's life condition. As the approach of death, external influences like money and power fade into significance. A person whose life was dominated by greed may become tortured by frustration. Someone who spent his life seeking power may become terrified. A person who has lived a wise and fulfilled life may feel contented and look forward to his next life, satisfied with his achievements in this one. Our dominant state of life remains fixed in death, and we are reborn in that same life state. We are born into circumstances which are exactly right for us. So, from the Buddhist point of view, conception involves not only the sexual union of the parents, but also the entity of life of the potential child. It may be misleading to give specific examples as life is complex. However, for the sake of clarification, suppose someone was extremely selfish and misused other people's love for their selfish ends. This would be me making the cause to be unloved in the future. Hence, this person may be reborn to parents who were undemonstrative and never cuddle their child. In later life, this person might think it was the parent's fault that he or she is unable to develop a loving relationship. However, in the light of Buddhism, it was the child who determined that outcome as an effect or cause made in a past life. To put it another way, these circumstances offer the opportunity to change this selfish tendency. This is not to make a moral judgment, but to acknowledge that selfishness is small minded and makes us unhappy. A large part of happiness is to be able to give freely to others. Of course, tension in child parent relationships are also determined by the life condition of the parents. So, the right circumstances for birth depend on parents and child as well as environment. There are innumerable different circumstances for birth, rich or poor, man or woman, race or culture. Individual karma accounts for these. While alive, we have the opportunity to shape our own future through the causes we make. If we believe that life is eternal and that the effects of these causes continue, there is all the more reason to challenge our witness in this lifetime. Belief in the entity of life gives us perspective and security. Fear of all kinds stems ultimately from fear of death. When we experience the oneness of life and death, the oneness of ourselves and the universe, we feel happy and calm. Life becomes a source of wonder and joy. There is no longer any need to cling on to people and possessions. From the viewpoint of eternity, this life is but a fleeting moment. From another point of view, the present moment itself is eternity. Expressing our true humanity and savoring each moment is real happiness. Cycles of life and death can be likened to the altering periods of sleeping and wakefulness. We can understand death as a state in which, just as sleep prepares us for the next day's activities, we rest and replenish ourselves for a new life. Viewed in this light, death is not to be revered or reviled, but should be acknowledged with life as a blessing to be appreciated. The Lotus Sutra, the core of Mahayana Buddhism, states that the purpose of existence, the eternal cycles of life and death, is to be happy and at ease. It further teaches that sustained faith and practice enables us to keep a deep and abiding joy in death as well as life, to be equally happy and at ease with both. Nichiren Buddhism describes the attainment of this state as the greatest of all joys. If the tragedies of this century of war and revolution have taught us anything, it is the folly of viewing the reform of external factors, such as social systems, as the sole determiner of human happiness. I am convinced that in the coming century, foremost importance must and will be placed on the inward directed reformation, inspired by a new understanding of life and death. Oh, so that's the end of that one. And so tomorrow, the meaning of Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo. So until next time, take care and Nam-Myoho-Renge-Kyo.